At 12:41 a.m. on the peaceful starry night of March 8, 2014, a Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777-200ER took off from Kuala Lumpur and headed towards Beijing, China. Reaching its designated cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, Malaysia Airlines' designation is MH. The flight number was 370. However, the majority of the aircraft and everyone on board were never seen again. And even after so many years after the mysterious disappearance of the aircraft, we still don't understand what happened to it or where it is right now. Flight 370 will forever be remembered as the greatest aviation mystery due to the disappearance of the aircraft in mid-flight and the lack of any satisfactory explanations. Our goal in making this documentary is to provide you with as much information as we can and to help you understand how precisely a plane might disappear in the modern era. About the flight. Flight 370 was one of Malaysia Airlines' 2 daily flights that connected Kuala Lumpur with Beijing. On March 8th at 12:35 a.m., Kuala Lumpur to Beijing Flight 370 was due to depart, taking a 5-hour 34-minute flight before landing in Beijing at 6:30 a.m. The airplane has more than enough fuel to stay in the air for 7 hours 31 minutes, which would be more than enough time for an emergency diversion. The aircraft was 11 years old and there were no known technical problems in the past. 2 pilots and a 10-person crew, all of whom were citizens of Malaysia, were in charge of flying the aircraft. About pilots. Zahari Ahmad Shah, the pilot in charge, was a senior professional with over 18,000 hours of flight experience. He was 53 years old and had worked for Malaysia Airlines since 1981. His co-pilot was Farik Abdul Hamid, a 27 years old with over 2,700 hours of flight experience, has been employed by the company for 7 years. About passengers. There were 227 passengers on board, in addition to these 2 pilots and the other 10 staff members, 153 Chinese, 50 Malaysians, 7 Indonesians, 6 Australians, 5 Indians, 4 French, 3 Americans, 2 Canadians, 2 Iranians, 2 New Zealanders, 2 Ukrainians, 1 Dutch, 1 Russian, and 1 Taiwanese national were present. Flights taking off. Flight 370 departed Kuala Lumpur's runway at 12:41 a.m., a little bit later than expected. Air traffic control immediately gave the go-ahead to rise to 18,000 feet in the air. The first officer on board the flight spoke verbally with air traffic control before departure, and the captain spoke with them shortly after the aircraft took off, according to later voice analysis. After taking off, initial operations of the flight went smoothly. However, at 1:06 a.m., the aircraft made its final automatic position report and transmission. Only a few minutes later, at 1:19 a.m., someone on the airplane spoke to someone else for the last time. At that point, the flight's cockpit received a communication from Kuala Lumpur radar instructing them to enter Vietnam's airspace. With the message, Malaysian 370 contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. The chief pilot, Captain Zahari, simply said, "All right, good night, Malaysian 370." In response to this, the disappearance. On its intended course, the aircraft was currently passing over the Gulf of Thailand. This is when things started to get strange, because just 3 minutes after making their final verbal contact with the outside world at 1:21 a.m., Flight 370 abruptly disappeared from the radar screens at both Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh City. There were few clouds and no storms in the territory. Thus, it is very possible that the transponder was manually turned off by someone. This confirms that the transponder on board the flight was no longer functioning at this time. After this, though military radar was still able to follow the airplane, and this is what happened. For some reason, the aircraft started to turn right, but abruptly diverted to the left, turning southwesterly. Flight 370 then went directly back over the Malay Peninsula, fluctuating by a few thousand feet altitude. Flight 370 was seen at 1:52 a.m., flying close south of Penang Island before making a second turn, crossing the Strait of Malacca. The last known location of MH370 was approximately here over the Indian Ocean at 2:22 a.m., which was close to the outside limits of the Malaysian military radar. Even after being outside the radar range, the plane was still communicating through satellite. It has been determined, based on a study of the satellite data, that MH370 subsequently made another strange turn in this approximate area and continued to fly this way for more than 5 hours. At 2:39, a call was placed to the cockpit once more, but no one inside answered it. A second call to the cockpit was placed over 4 hours later at 7:13 a.m., and yet this time it just rang and got no reply. The flight was 1 hour behind its scheduled arrival in Beijing at 7:24 a.m. While still in the air somewhere over the Indian Ocean, the Malaysian authorities declared that they had lost communication with the aircraft. The search and rescue operations has been launched, but they were unaware that MH370 was still in the air at the time. At 8:19 in the morning, the last bit of data from the plane was received. It was a login request that the aircraft had submitted to the company Inmarsat. It would only have occurred if there had been a power or software failure. It is most likely that the plane had ran out of fuel at this point because it had been in the air for 7 hours and 38 minutes when its intended flight time was only 5.5 hours. At 9:15 a.m., Inmarsat issued a second status inquiry to the aircraft, but this time there was no response. Given this information, it is most likely that the jet crashed in the Indian Ocean between 8:19 and 9:15 in the morning, while the specific location is still unknown. When the last contact with the flight was made at 8:19 a.m., it was estimated that the flight was somewhere along this black curve. Taking this into account when analyzing the plane's general flight path from satellite data, it is most likely that the plane went down in the middle of nowhere, thousands of kilometers west of Australia. In summary, the plane took off from Kuala Lumpur bound for Beijing and initially followed the standard flight path before abruptly turning right over the Gulf of Thailand and then abruptly turning left to cover the Malay Peninsula. The plane made a second turn after passing Penang Island to fly into the Indian Ocean, then made a third turn to travel south and flew for more than 5 hours straight across the Indian Ocean before it likely ran out of fuel and crashed in the middle of nowhere west of Australia. First search operation. Almost immediately, the search for the aircraft and its 239 people was initiated. Southeast Asia was where the search initially started because it was thought early that this is where the plane most likely went down. However, as further details regarding the flight's precise route emerged, the focus of the operation was shifted to the Indian Ocean. Military planes conducted 19 and 345 sorties between March 18th and April 28th to scan a region greater than the country of India, 4.6 million square kilometers, but came up empty-handed. Around 1800 kilometers west of Perth, Australia, a sonar search of the sea floor was also attempted, but this effort likewise turned up nothing. Ray of hope. Nothing was really found until July 2015, more than a year after the aircraft disappeared, when a piece of wreckage was found washed up on the shore of Reunion. The piece was a wing flapper on this portion of the plane and was proven to have been from MH370. It was discovered 4,000 kilometers west of the initial search area. Its research revealed that the plane's landing flaps were not extended at the time of the incident, which breathtakingly confirms the idea that the aircraft submerged vertically to its death before crashing into the water. First search was suspended. Later, a few more parts of the plane's wreckage were found scattered along the coast of East Africa, but on January 17, 2017, nearly 3 years after the aircraft vanished, the official search for the flight was put on hold because no other traces of the aircraft's location has been found. The governments of Malaysia, Australia and China were primarily responsible for the investigation. The $155 million expenditure made it the most costly search in aviation history. According to the official search report, the crash site was located in a 25,000 square kilometer area of the ocean here, west of Australia, a region about the size of Macedonia. Second search operation. Although a private US corporation by the name of Ocean Infinity stated in January 2018 that it would begin the search for the aircraft in that 25,000 square kilometer area as of March 2018. They too had searched a 33,000 square kilometer area surrounding it with no luck. There has been a plethora of theories about what happened to MH370 after more than 4 years of searching and few answers. We were quite convinced about the flight path taken in the close direction of where it crashed, yet we are no closer to figuring out why it occurred. Possibility of missing. A potential hijacking by passengers on board was the first significant theory that received a lot of early attention. Two guys with stolen passports who are Iranian citizens were on board the flight, which sparked a significant amount of suspicion. They had only arrived in Malaysia a week prior to the trip, and their tickets were just for one-way travel from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. However, Interpol later determined that neither of the men were terrorists and were simply claiming refuge after fleeing Iran. Neither of the men possessed the necessary skills to have flown a plane and carried out a hijacking, and both American and Malaysian officials thoroughly investigated the backgrounds of every single passenger listed in the flight manifest but were unable to uncover any leads. Although it was believed that the airplane might have been taken over and flown to a far-off island, nobody has ever claimed responsibility for that. This scenario has significantly less chance of happening now that the wreckage has been found off the coast of Africa. A passenger hijacking doesn't appear likely, but what about a crew hijacking? Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah was the subject of significant suspicion, but no solid proof connecting him to the tragedy has been found. The Malaysian government spoke with 170 friends and relatives of the crew members who were on board, but again, nothing noteworthy or suspicious was obtained from them. It's unclear exactly what the pilot's motivation would have been if they had caused the tragedy. Police investigated both pilots' residences and took the financial documents of the entire 12 crew members. The FBI even looked into the data from Captain Shah's own flight simulator, but nothing suspicious was found. The most plausible theory, according to American intelligence analysts, is that someone in the cockpit of flight MH370 manually reconfigured the aircraft's autopilot before it took the turn out over the Indian Ocean and continued flying for 5 hours until it ran out of fuel. Remember when Flight 370 first vanished off the radar screens because a transponder failed? It's also possible that someone in the crew turned the transponder off manually at that time. Although it appears likely that a crew member was to blame, there is still no solid proof that this is what actually took place. Some other theories. There are a few other strange hypotheses floating around on what went wrong on the plane that day. Some of the hypotheses include the following: a small black hole swallowed the plane, a hacker hijacked the aircraft, the phantom cell phone theory, and shoot down beliefs. The last scenario that is conceivable is a fire in the cockpit. It's possible that a fire may have started anywhere on board the aircraft while it was on its way to Beijing. According to the theory, the pilot made the decision to turn around and intended to try an emergency landing at the next appropriate airfield in northern Malaysia, based on an analysis of the timing of the satellite communications data. A power outage mid-flight would be the most likely explanation. Since a problem with the engine has been ruled out, it is unknown what may have caused the power outage. It's possible that someone inside the airplane manually turned off the electrical system, even if it's not clear why it would have happened. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau came to the conclusion that the most likely cause of the plane's uninterrupted 5-hour flight over the Indian Ocean was an unresponsive crew brought on by a potential cabin decompression incident. Conclusion: no matter what theory you might believe, it's likely that it has flaws that cast doubt on it, making it frustrating for you to not have any answers. Just think of how painful it must be for the friends and the loved ones of those who were on board. MH370 continues aviation's greatest unsolved mystery, and as long as the plane hasn't been found, we are unlikely to get answers or any settlement. It's possible that someone somewhere in the planet knows exactly what happened to flight MH370, but it's also possible that nobody at all does. Whichever of these two scenarios is true, they're both unpleasant. It takes a lot of effort to create these videos, since we always attempt to provide you as much information as we can about the subjects. If you'd like the video, subscribe to our channel and share it with your loved ones. It would be greatly appreciated. As always, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. God bless you all.